Christiaan Huygens, FRSS, was a prominent Dutch mathematician and scientist. He is known particularly as an astronomer, physicist, probabilist and horologist. Huygens was a leading scientist of his time. His work included early telescopic studies of the rings of Saturn and the discovery of its moon Titan, the invention of the pendulum clock and other investigations in timekeeping. He published major studies of mechanics and optics, and a pioneer work on games of chance. Early life. Christiaan Huygens was born on 14 April 1629 in The Hague, into a rich and influential Dutch family, the second son of Constantijn Huygens. Christiaan was named after his paternal grandfather. His mother was Susanna van Baerle. She died in 1637, shortly after the birth of Huygens' sister. The couple had 5 children: Constantijn, Christiaan, Lodewijk, Philips and Susanna. Constantijn Huygens was a diplomat and advisor to the House of Orange, and also a poet and musician. His friends included Galileo Galilei, Marin Mersenne and René Descartes. Huygens was educated at home until turning 16 years old. He liked to play with miniatures of mills and other machines. His father gave him a liberal education. He studied languages and music, history and geography, mathematics, logic and rhetoric, but also dancing, fencing and horse riding. Descartes was impressed by his skills in geometry. Student years. His father sent Huygens to study law and mathematics at the University of Leiden, where he studied from May 1645 to March 1647. Frans van Schooten was an academic at Leiden from 1646, and also a private tutor to Huygens and his elder brother, replacing Stamperean on the advice of Descartes. Van Schooten brought his mathematical education up to date, in particular introducing him to the work of Fermat on differential geometry. After 2 years, from March 1647, Huygens continued his studies at the newly founded College of Orange, in Breda, where his father was a curator. The change occurred because of a duel between his brother Lodewijk and another student. Constantijn Huygens was closely involved in the new college, which lasted only to 1669. The rector was André Rivet. Christiaan Huygens lived at the home of the jurist Johan Henrik Dorber, and had mathematics classes with the English lecturer John Pell. He completed his studies in August 1649. He then had a stint as a diplomat on a mission with Henry, Duke of Nassau. It took him to Bentheim, then Flensburg. He took off for Denmark, visited Copenhagen and Helsinki, and hoped to cross the Øresund to visit Descartes in Stockholm. It was not to be. While his father had wished Christiaan to be a diplomat, it also was not to be. In political terms, the first stadtholderless period that began in 1650 meant that the House of Orange was not in power, removing Constantijn Huygens' influence. Further, the father realized that his son had no interest in such a career. Early correspondence. Huygens generally wrote in French or Latin. While still a college student at Leiden, he began a correspondence with the intelligentsia Mersenne, who died quite soon afterwards in 1648. Mersenne wrote to Constantijn on his son's talent for mathematics, and flatteringly compared him to Archimedes. The letters show the early interests of Huygens in mathematics. In October 1646 there is the suspension bridge, and the demonstration that a catenary is not a parabola. In 1647 they cover the claim of Grégoire de St. Vincent to squaring the circle, rectification of the ellipse, projectiles, and the vibrating string. Some of Mersenne's concerns at the time, such as the cycloid, the center of oscillation, and the gravitational constant, were matters Huygens only took seriously towards the end of the 1650s. Mersenne had also written on musical theory. Huygens preferred mean-tone temperament. He innovated in 31 equal temperament, which was not itself a new idea, but known to Francisco de Salinas. using logarithms to investigate it further and show its close relation to the mean-tone system. In 1654, Huygens returned to his father's house in The Hague, and was able to devote himself entirely to research. The family had another house not far away at Hoveyk, and he spent time there during the summer. His scholarly life did not allow him to escape bouts of depression. Subsequently, Huygens developed a broad range of correspondence, though picking up the threads after 1648 was hampered by the 5-year Fronde in France. Visiting Paris in 1655, Huygens called on Ismail Boulier to introduce himself. Then Boulier took him to see Claude Mylin. The Parisian group of savants that had gathered around Massena held together into the 1650s, and Mylin, who had assumed the secretarial role, took some trouble from then on to keep Huygens in touch. Through Pierre de Carcavy, Huygens corresponded in 1656 with Pierre de Fermat, whom he admired greatly, though this side of idolatry. The experience was bittersweet and even puzzling, since it became clear that Fermat had dropped out of the research mainstream, and his priority claims could probably not be made good in some cases. Besides, Huygens was looking by then to apply mathematics, while Fermat's concerns ran to purer topics. Scientific debut. Huygens was often slow to publish his results and discoveries. In the early days, his mentor Frans van Schooten was cautious for the sake of his reputation. The first work Huygens put in print was Theorema de Quadratura in the field of quadrature. It included material discussed with Massena some years before, such as the fallacious nature of the squaring of the circle by Grégoire de Saint Vincent. His preferred methods were those of Archimedes and Fermat. Quadrature was a live issue in the 1650s, and through Mylin, Huygens intervened in the discussion of the mathematics of Thomas Hobbes. Persisting in trying to explain the errors Hobbes had fallen into, he made an international reputation. Huygens studied spherical lenses from a theoretical point of view in 1652–3, obtaining results that remained unpublished until Isaac Barrow. His aim was to understand telescopes. He began grinding his own lenses in 1655, collaborating with his brother Constantin. He designed in 1662 what is now called the Hygenian eyepiece, with 2 lenses, as a telescope ocular. Lenses were also a common interest through which Huygens could meet socially in the 1660s with Baruch Spinoza, who ground them professionally. They had rather different outlooks on science, Spinoza being the more committed Cartesian, and some of their discussion survives in correspondence. He encountered the work of Antony van Leeuwenhoek, another lens grinder, in the field of microscopy which interested his father. Huygens wrote the first treatise on probability theory, De Ratiocinaisa in Ludo Alii. He had been told of recent work in the field by Fermat, Blaise Pascal and Gerard Desargues 2 years earlier, in Paris. Frans van Schooten translated the original Dutch manuscript, Van Rekening in Spellen Vangeluk, into Latin and published it in his Exercitationum Mathematicarum. It deals with games of chance, in particular the problem of points. Huygens took as intuitive his appeals to concepts of fair game and equitable contract, and used them to set up a theory of expected values. In 1662 Sir Robert Moray sent Huygens John Grant's life table, and in time Huygens and his brother Lodewijk worked on life expectancy. On 3 May 1661, Huygens observed the planet Mercury transit over the Sun, using the telescope of instrument maker Richard Reeve in London, together with astronomer Thomas Street and Reeve. Street then debated the published record of the transit of Hevelius, a controversy mediated by Henry Oldenburg. Huygens passed to Hevelius a manuscript of Jeremiah Horrocks on the transit of Venus, 1639, which thereby was printed for the first time in 1662. In that year Huygens, who played the harpsichord, took an interest in music, and Simon Stevens' theories on it. He showed very little concern to publish his theories on consonants, some of which were lost for centuries. The Royal Society of London elected him a Fellow in 1663. In France, the Montmore Academy was the form the old Massena Circle took after the mid-1650s. Huygens took part in its debates, and supported its dissident faction who favoured experimental demonstration to curtail fruitless discussion, and opposed amateurish attitudes. During 1663 he made what was his third visit to Paris. The Montmore Academy closed down, and Huygens took the chance to advocate a more Baconian program in science. In 1666 he moved to Paris and a position at Louis XIV's new French Academy of Sciences. In Paris Huygens had an important patron and correspondent in Jean-Baptiste Colbert. His relationship with the Academy was not always easy, however, and in 1670 Huygens, seriously ill, chose Francis Vernon to carry out a donation of his papers to the Royal Society in London, should he die. Then the Franco-Dutch War took place. England's part in it is thought to have damaged his relationship with the Royal Society. Robert Hooke for the Royal Society lacked the urbanity to handle the situation. In 1673, Denis Papin was assistant to Huygens from 1671. One of their projects, which did not bear fruit directly, was the gunpowder engine. Papin moved to England in 1678, and continued to work in this area. Using the Paris Observatory, Huygens made further astronomical observations. In 1678 he introduced Nicolas' heart circuit to French scientists such as Nicolas Malebranche and Giovanni Cassini. It was in Paris, also, that Huygens met the young diplomat Gottfried Leibniz, there in 1672 on a vain mission to meet Arnauld de Pompon, the French foreign minister. At this time Leibniz was working on a calculating machine, and he moved on to London in early 1673 with diplomats from Mainz, but from March 1673 Leibniz was tutored in mathematics by Huygens. Huygens taught him analytical geometry. An extensive correspondence ensued, in which Huygens showed reluctance to accept the advantages of infinitesimal calculus. Later life, Huygens moved back to The Hague in 1681 after suffering serious depressive illness. In 1684, he published Astroscopia Compendiaria on his new tubeless aerial telescope. He attempted to return to France in 1685, but the revocation of the Edict of Nantes precluded this move. His father died in 1687, and he inherited Hobbike, which he made his home the following year. On his third visit to England, in 1689, Huygens met Isaac Newton on the 12th of June. They spoke about Iceland's spar, and subsequently corresponded about resisted motion. Huygens observed the acoustical phenomenon now known as flanging in 1693. He died in The Hague on 8 July 1695, and was buried in the Grote Kerk.